Okay, so upstairs in the laundry room area, I've made a little building beside my washer and dryer to hold your soaps and all that stuff, and ironing board and whatever else you need. You can see here that I've just got the top of my cabinet exposed, so it's ready for a countertop. I didn't really want to go through the expense of doing a granite countertop in the laundry room, so what I'm going to actually do here is a laminate countertop to match the laminate countertop that's in the dry bar area in the basement. So to start this, I'm going to take some measurements of the overall size so that I could fabricate my particle board top. Then I'm going to run two strips, one across the front and one across the back, to give the countertop some thickness to it. The wood that I'm using to build the countertop is only 5/8 thick. So I like to use the 5/8 particle board and have a strip of 5/8 particle board down here. And that will allow me to go with an 1.25 inch nosing on my laminate. So that's what I'm gonna do. Next, I'm just gonna cut these strips, install those into the top, and then I will fabricate the top itself and get ready to cut my laminate down to size and show you guys how to do that. Okay, so here's the start of my laminate countertop in the laundry room. You can see it's looking pretty good. I got a nice 1 3/8 front on it. I'm going to disassemble this for you so you can see how it goes together. So this is the nosing piece, which I'm going to laminate first, so that the top laminate goes over top of it to protect that joint that would be there. This is the top itself. It's just the 5/8 particle board cut to size. So I'm going to glue that nosing and staple it to the front of it. Now these are 5/8 thick strips, and that's what helps me get the illusion that I have the 1.75 inch thick countertop. So these will get attached down to, well, this one will get attached a bit further back, like right there. And when I build this countertop, I'll fill a finish piece underneath there so that if someone does open the door and they're touching under there, it's not on the particle board, it's on a smooth piece of wood at least. So these will get actually stapled right down to the cabinet on both of them. And then I will pre-make this countertop out in the garage or in the basement, and do all the laminate, and then bring it in and just drop it on the top. Come in here and run some screws up underneath into the countertop to fasten it down. So let's head out to the garage to assemble this countertop and start cutting and getting our other countertop ready in the dry bar area. Okay, so this is all ready to go. I'll bring it into the laundry room just to make sure it fits all nice. And then I've just got to give this edge a sand so that it's perfectly flush. If you didn't get it perfectly flush, you can use some filler that is compatible with your contact cement. The next thing to happen on this surface is contact cement. So if you do have some fill to go along here, just make sure it's compatible with that. And I'm also going to sand this front where the staples are in and patch those holes as well. Laminate has a strong tendency to show joints or whatever's underneath of it. So again, when you're contact cementing this and stuff like that, I can feel particles on it right now that are raised up. It has to be sanded thoroughly and wiped down even with a moist cloth just to make sure it's all perfectly clean. So let's go into the house and take a look at this. So now I'm going to use my stapler just to staple these spacers down. Okay, so those are in there. Got my finished countertop. Okay, so that's fitting in super nice. You can see here that on the side I've kept the nosing piece a little shy from the wall. It's just because the only way I can drop this in effectively is doing that, so it needed to be a little reduced so it doesn't like fully rip a gouge into the wall. Like it still caught it there when it was coming down. But other than that, this is ready to be sanded down and prepped. And if I keep my laminate, you can see I've got a little gap here, but if I keep my laminate all tight to these edges, then when I reinstall this piece, it should be cleaned up easily with a silicone joint. So I'm just gonna leave this now, get the other one prepped, and cover them up at the same time. Okay, so I'm about to start my laminate countertop. I'm gonna start by taking some measurements for some strips that I've got to put on across here and across the front. And same with across the opening for the fridge. And then I'm going to cut this L-shaped top all out of one sheet. I'm going to try not to have to join it. Whenever you can build a laminate countertop without having to make a joint, it's a lot easier. So one piece is the way to go, but if you're in a situation where it's larger than one piece, then you can join it, but use lots of glue. You're probably going to have to patch over the joint of the wood so that it doesn't show through your laminate. So here on this edge, I wanted that laminate to stick past the 1 inch, so I'm safe to stop my strips right flush with this edge. So 2 at 70 3/8, and then I'm just going to take 28. And then 2 at 30. When I cut those strips, I'm just going to use my small stapler, which you saw me use to staple the backs onto the cabinets. I'm just going to shoot down into these cabinets with these strips. The strips are to give the illusion that the countertop that I'm building is actually thicker than it is. The particle board top that I'm going to use is only 5/8 thick. So I add the strips to double up the material, and then the face piece that I put across the front here will be that doubled up material. So it'll look similar to a granite countertop that I've got in my house, which is 1 1/4 inch thick. I think I shot for, or I'm shooting for about 1 3/8 inch thick for my for my front piece. So now I'm going to measure my back wall measurement, my measurement here, and all my measurements to face of cabinet so that I can figure out how wide I actually want to, or how much overhang the laminate's actually going to have. So to the front I've got 13 inches. That's consistent all the way down. On this side I got 21 and a half, both sides. So 21 and a half. Now, if I want my finished countertop edge to finish 1.25 inches further, and the nosing material or the face material that I'm adding to the flat piece of particle board is 5/8 thick, I need to reduce this by 5/8. So that brings me to 5/8. So that means that the width of this strip here is actually going to be 13 and 5/8. And then when I add my face material, it'll add another 5/8 and give me that 1.25 inch overhang that I'm looking at. So this strip needs to be cut at 13 5/8. Again, same thing over here. I want 1.25 inch overhang from this front face. I've got 21 and a half, so I just need to add 5/8 to that. So this back piece is going to be the depth of 22 and an eighth. And then I'm just going to measure the width and the length of these two pieces. Okay, so 13 5/8, 22 and an eighth, and now (40 5/8) across the back. (40 3/4) across the front. And the length. So again, here I only want a 1 inch overhang, so I can only bring my board that I'm going to cut here 5/8 back from this corner so that I can add my face piece on it. I am going to play a little bit safer too, because there's going to be some laminate thickness when I actually laminate the laminate to it. So I've got a pencil mark there. Just going to measure off my back wall. And I'm going to cut this at 70 and 5/8. Okay, so now let's head out to the garage and get all these pieces cut. Okay, so I'm back in the garage here. I've got a sheet of particle board. Believe it or not, when I was making the laundry room countertop, what I cut off of this and kneaded, and once I removed and got all these strips that I needed, it's left me with pretty well the exact size shape that I need to cut out my shape. So I'm just going to use this drawing to lay out this board to the correct dimensions, and then I'm going to use my circular saw and cut through it. Okay, so this line that I just put on here was that out of squareness that the walls had. I marked off the back wall to get to the front of where the fridge would be. And when I measured over to the side, I had that 40 and 7/8 across the front, but I had 40 and 5/8 across the front. And then I had 40 and 7/8 across the front, and I have 40 and 5/8 across the back. So I have to trim that off, and that should fit perfect. Now I'm just gonna get my L shape marked out and begin to cut. Just gonna mark out the total length now. I needed 70 and 5/8. Okay, so now that I've got my countertop marked out, it's kind of an awkward piece to put on a sawhorse or whatnot to cut out without it breaking on you. So I'm going to set my blade to the thickness and cut right over the table. It might leave a little groove into my wood table below, but at least the piece will be secure and stay here for me instead of me having to try to hold it and hover it. So I'm going to set my blade by bringing my saw to the edge of the material. I'll show you up here, and then just lift it up until you can just see one of these bottom teeth projecting through. So do you see how that little bottom tooth is just coming through? That's when I would lock down my adjustment, and that should cut right through the particle board when I go to make the cuts. Okay, so now I've got that real awkward trim to make along this edge. I'm going to lengthen my blade back down and carefully hold the guard up and glide onto this line, work at that 3/16 to nothing to fix the edge. Okay, so now that I've got my piece cut down to size, in this intersecting corner here, I stop the blade right at the corner, which means that it's not all the way cut through. The blade, when it came this way, would curve back that way and not be cut all the way through, and then same with this one. So I've just got my trusty carpenter's handsaw. Just gonna pull this way a little bit and finish the cut. Okay, so this is the finished piece that I marked out. I'm just gonna take it downstairs, make sure this part of it all fits in, make sure it's the right length. Then I will staple a nosing piece on here, across here, and across here. Flip it upside down, use that casing material just to staple down that extra support edge for the nosing not to collapse back down, and to give it a finished kind of look underneath. So let's bring this downstairs and go have a look. Okay, so my piece won't drop into position. It just needs a little bit more clearance before it can go down. I've noticed on this side of the wall here, I've got a 1/8 inch gap at the back, and I'm perfectly tight at the front. So I'm going to use my pencil and rest it flat on the wall and glide it along the wood. That's called scribing. So I'm going to scribe the contour of the wall down onto the wood, carry this back outside, trim it off, and then it should fit perfect. So here's my pencil. You can see that it's not on the wood. Now it is. So once I trim that little piece from here to there, this whole piece should just drop down in. So let's pull it out and take it back to the garage and give it a trim. Okay, so that's fitting in here quite nicely now. I've got a little bit of a gap against this wall in this section, but in this scenario, I am tiling a couple rows of tile off the countertop, so this gap that would be here would be acceptable because it's going to be covered by the tile. So now that I know this all fits well, I'm going to take it back out to the garage and add my 5/8 thick by 1 3/8 nosing piece all the way around, and then the finished casing piece on the underneath. Yeah. Okay, so good thing this thing is good and strong, or that would have been probably a situation, but it's all nailed together now, glued. It's looking really good, like the nosing piece all went on nice and smooth. So I'm just going to do the same prep that I was talking about on the other piece, which is sand this edge and patch this joint if I need to. Sand this edge and patch the nail holes, or the staple holes, and sand the whole top, give it a wipe down with a damp cloth, then begin to cut my laminate to this approximate size. Okay, so now that you've got your countertops fabricated, so this is my laundry room countertop. You can see here I've got some patch on the top edge and some patch on the front for covering the nail holes. And this is my L-shaped countertop for the dry bar area. Haven't got the patch on that one yet, but what I'm going to do right now is cut my sheet of laminate down to the approximate sizes that I need to attach them to the countertops. So I'm just going to drag in my sheet, I'm going to gently set these countertops on top of it. Then I'm going to mark them out a little larger than the actual size so that I'm safe when I go to glue down. I'll be routering off the extra. And I'm going to use my carbide knife. This is a knife with a carbide tip in it. It's really pointy. With the laminate, once you score it 2 or 3 times in the face, maybe it even takes 10 times scoring it sometimes, this will actually get right through the laminate and cut your pieces down to size for you. So there is ways to do that with the router, and I'll show you another method that I use to cut the thin strips across the front on a table saw. But to get my sheets down to approximate sizes, I've always kind of used this method because it's really hard to use a full sheet of laminate on a portable table saw. So I'm just gonna drag my sheet over here and show you guys how to lay out the approximate sizes. Okay, so this is my 4 foot by 8 foot sheet of laminate. You can order laminate in larger sizes. So if you have a kitchen L shape, maybe it's 11 feet long and the L is 4 feet or whatever, you can order upwards of 12 feet by 5 feet. That's the biggest one that I've seen. I'm sure if you look around, maybe there's even larger, but I think after that size, if you gotta make a joint in your laminate, that you're gonna just have to make a joint because the sheet will be too hard to handle. So I always start with a good assessment of my sheet just to make sure there's no scratching or imperfections. I can see here that I've got a big chip in the corner, so I'm gonna wanna be cautious that I don't set that in any area that will be affected by that. So I'm gonna take my L-shaped countertop to start. Set it down gently onto the surface. Okay, you can see I've got sufficient overhang all the way around. I'm just going to try to make this line fairly parallel so that I'm keeping my cuts fairly square. So what I'm trying to do is just make sure that I'm using this sheet the best way possible. I need to cover the top, and then I also need strips to cover the edges. The longest strip I need is this one right here. So I'm going to want to check that this section of waist, that I can get a strip out of it that's long enough. So 64 inches is safely there. And I'm under 64. So from this strip that'll be cut off, I should be able to get 3 strips cut to the width that I need for my nosing pieces, and that will be enough to do all 1, 2, 3, 4 edges of my project. So this, I've got my damage area there. Left is overhang. I've got overhang on this side. Now I'm just going to mark some lines here, creating some overhang, and also down this side, and all the way around that piece, and begin to cut this sheet down to this size. Okay, so now that I've got my pieces laid out, I'm going to use the back handle of a putty knife. I'm going to hold my pencil up to the side of it and use this as my scribing tool. So you can see that that's going to give me a 3/4 inch line off of the side here, which will definitely keep me in the safe for the size piece that I need. So all right, so that actually worked really good. If you can see here, I've got about a 3/4 inch line past the edge of where the countertop is. Now I'm going to remove the countertops and begin to cut this piece up. Got a nice straight edge. Just set this on right on the line. Got my carbide knife. I'm going to kneel on the level just so I can't move. Now with laminate, don't try to cut through this the first time. Your first scratch on this surface is very important because it needs to be straight, and every cut that you make will get a little deeper, but the first one has to be super straight. So got my level pinched down properly, and I'll just start nice and slow. I push a little harder each time. Oh, see, I got snagged there, which means it's getting very close to getting cut all the way through. When I'm cutting something that has 2 lines on it, I have to cut one of them all the way through. The other one I can cut partially and break the sheet. So I'll show you that once I get through this one here. Okay, broken. Now, just breaking that, I did get a cut on my finger already. Just on the fingertip there, just cut right through the skin a little bit. When you're cutting laminate this way, the remaining edge is very sharp, so be careful about that. I'll just set up on my second line now. I'll only have to make a few scores on this one, and then I should be able to break it. Okay, it's my top piece for the laundry room countertop. Okay, so for the drybar countertop, I've got the shape laid out there. I do want to salvage this piece for cutting on the table saw to make my strips. So I'm going to use a longer straight edge, get parallel up to the line, and then just bring it all the way through so that I can use this strip outside on the garage. Okay, so I'm past halfway through the surface. Just going to set my straight edge up to help it break there. Okay, there's my strip that I'm going to cut on the table saw to make the nosing pieces for the two countertops. Okay, so I'm left with kind of a weird shape over here and still have to cut out the shape to the countertop. Just because it is quicker to score halfway through and then break it, I'm gonna begin with this shorter side here, scribe halfway through and break that one before I start cutting this line and this one, because I'm gonna have to cut all the way through on this one, so I don't wanna have to do it twice over here. Really good beginner practice trick when you're setting your straight edge, and I know I haven't done it myself, but if you're just starting at doing this, always have your straight edge on the side that will protect you from scratching or destroying the side that you want to keep. So by me pinching this level down on this side, I can't get past it to mess up this side of the laminate, which is my good side. So just something to keep in mind. This piece is just scrap. Now I'm going to set up to cut all the way through the shorter side because it will be easier than cutting all the way through the longer side. Okay, that's over halfway through, so I'm going to break this piece now. I just wanted to bring to your attention that an inside corner like this is a very vulnerable area where if you're not holding this sheet stable, you can have it just shear off and break here. So you have to be very careful with your piece once it's there, because or once it's cut on the inside corner, because it's very vulnerable to tearing across. Okay, there's my rough cut for my drybar countertop. Okay, so back in the garage, we're gonna sand off this countertop. Particle board's got a little bit of an uneven surface on it, blemishes, etc., etc. Where you join the nosing piece to the top piece, it's never perfectly even, so I like to skim some filler on there, and across all the staples that I put across the front, I've got some filler on there. So I'm just gonna go through and sand this countertop really good. I'm gonna use a wet rag to wipe it down and make sure I get all the dust off, and then the next step is going to be gluing up this front edge and gluing up the strip that's going on it. We're gonna adhere that down with the contact cement, router it all off nice, and then we'll begin to put our top on. So I'm just gonna start sanding this off. feels good. I'm just gonna work this edge now. Okay, that feels all good. Now, if I had a lot of this sanding to do, I definitely would have put a dust mask on. Gets really grimy really fast. You can see I've got my edge all smooth, and when I check it all out with my hand, it feels really good. Got my nosing piece. The staples are all, staple holes are all flushed up, so it's very important that you take the time to do all this because your laminate will show imperfections through it. So, got a wet rag here, not too wet. Just gonna wipe down the surface to get all the dust off. Okay, so this, once this is dry, is going to be ready for its first layer of contact cement. Okay, so the nosing piece on my countertops is 1 3/8 wide. I've got my waste strip from the large piece downstairs. I'm determined that if I cut this down to 3 strips, that I will have enough edge material to finish the project that I need. So I'm gonna set it to 1 5/8 on my table saw, rip the 3 strips, and then that'll give me enough overhang to safely put the strips on and router the extra off. Got my laminate cutting blade in my saw. Very important that you use the appropriate blade in anything that you're using to the material that it is cutting. So laminate blade in the table saw. Got my strip here. Just gonna set up to 1 5/8. Now I'm gonna rip those 3 strips. Okay, so got my 3 nosing strips cut. Now I'm gonna head down and start gluing these pieces up. Okay, so I'm back into the basement where I'm going to do the gluing. It's a nice dust-free environment. Got my nosing piece here, which is what I'm gonna start with. If you were doing solid wood nosing on your countertop, this piece would be either oak or maple or whatever wood you want, and you're not actually putting laminate on the face. So you would start with your top and then router your edge and put a decorative edge on it and then stain your oak or whatever you got there as your finish. In my situation, I'm doing a laminate front and a laminate top. So you want to start with your nosing piece first so that the top will go over top of this laminate as well. So the proper procedure here is to do nosing piece first and then top. Unfortunately, you have to do it in 2 different glue ups because when you're routering this edge, your shavings will stick to the glue that you would put here. So no glue on this surface yet. We're only working on the nosing. So I'm just gonna hold this here, mark it. Okay, so I've got my strip here that's going to be the nosing. You can see that it's about a 1/4 inch wider than the actual thickness. So when I stick it on, I'm going to stick it on an 1/8 inch past each side and then router those edges flat. So to start, I'm going to glue down this side. I'm using a water-based contact cement. There is solvent-based, whatever you choose is up to you. I prefer the water-based. It's an easier cleanup. There is no harmful fumes with it. It just takes a little bit longer to dry in between coats. I will be putting 2 coats of contact cement on this side, and I'll be putting 2 coats of contact cement on the nosing as well. Just gonna flip it over so I got a flat surface to glue on. Foam roller works very well for this situation. Just load up the roller a bit. Okay, so that's a very nice even coat of contact cement on that side. Now I'm going to put my first coat on this nosing here. That's all nice and thick there as well. I've got extra glue sticking on the bottom here. That will affect the router, so I like to squeeze it down, just rub it off with your finger. It will actually start building up there, and then when you run your router on it, the contact cement gums up the router bit and it cuts inefficiently. So I'm just gonna leave this to dry. This specific contact cement is telling me that when the product is dry, it will appear translucent and will not be sticky to the touch. So I will let this sit for as long as it takes, periodically checking if I can touch the material without it sticking to my hand. Okay, so I've got my drybar countertop here. I'm just going to show you guys quickly what to look for when you're patching and how to patch this up. So I know that when I've attached these 2 pieces, I can feel that they're not exactly running on the same level plane. So I am going to putty knife filler across that whole joint there, and across that whole joint, and across that whole joint. Then I'm going to look for other divots or pits in this particle board, which I don't really see any. But if you had a dent or a chip out or anything like that, you need to fill on top of it. Also, I'm using the same fill that I did with my woodwork. I've checked with the manufacturer of my contact cement. It is compatible with the contact cement, so I'm A-okay to proceed with this type of patch to patch this up. So I'm going to patch this line, and then I'm going to patch the staple holes that are across the front edging. Okay, that looks pretty good for the top. So I'm just going to stand my piece up so that I can work the edge. Set this back down. And I've just got my last edge here to finish off. Okay, so this countertop is all patched up. Let it dry for a few hours, then hit it with the orbital sander to get it all smooth. Wipe it down with a damp cloth, and it'll be ready for glue up for the laminate. It's been about 20 minutes or so. I can touch this surface and it's not sticking to my hand. Also can touch here and it's not sticking to my hand. So that is when the product is dry and they say sufficient enough to stick the two together. And how contact cement works is the two sides that you glue down, once they touch each other, they don't come back apart. So, but when I went to school to learn how to be a carpenter, my teacher had taught me to do 2 coats of gluing. So I just have always stuck with that, and it's always really worked for me. So. Okay, and remember to use your finger and smooth down the glue that went over the other side, because it will affect your router bit when you're trimming the laminate. So we'll let these 2 pieces dry again, then we'll be ready to stick them together and roll them down with a roller to compress them tightly together. Use our laminate trimmer to trim off the extra and proceed with the top. 2 coats of contact cement on this piece. You can see that it's not sticking to my hand. Good on this front piece as well. So I'm ready to stick the 2 pieces together and then roll on top of them. This is a rubber roller used for contact cement, or sorry, used for laminate installation. You apply the 2 pieces together and then you firmly press down and roll back and forth with this roller, just like that, squeezing the 2 layers together very tightly. So I'm gonna get my piece up. I'm just gonna show you here, nice double check to see how much overhang I got. I'm putting these pieces upside down so that they won't stick, but you can see that I've got about 3/8 of an inch on each side on overhang. So when I do stick this piece on, I'm going to start with my 3/8 overhang on this side, holding it with my fingers pinched right between like this, and I'm gonna slowly bring this piece down and touch it down just like that so that I know it's in the right position. And the right position is overhang on all 4 sides. You can get kind of tricky and get one of your sides set up, or even 2. But I don't recommend it because the router will trim it up perfectly, where you might be off slightly and regret that you did it that way. So I'm gonna take my piece now, clamping it between my fingers. Got about a 3/8 overhang there. Slowly bringing it down. I can see that I'm safely gonna put it down there. All right, looks good. I've got overhang on all 4 sides. Just gonna put some hand pressure to get the 2 layers together. Okay, so that is held on there fairly well. Now what I'm gonna do is take my roller, I'm putting really firm pressure on this. Take your time. Don't go too close to the edge where you snap off that piece that's there. Just stay back that 3/4 of an inch from the edge. You can always re-roll it after we're done with the laminate trimming. So Okay, so I've got really good contact between these two pieces. I'm gonna go out to the garage now, set my laminate trimmer with the appropriate router bit to glide across this edge on all four sides to trim the laminate flush to the face of all these four sides. Okay, so now that I've got my nosing piece glued down to the particle board countertop, I'm ready to use my laminate trimmer to router off the extra material that's around the side. Here's my laminate trimmer. In there, I've got what they call a flush bit. This has got a little ball bearing here at the end that rolls against the flat surface, and then the cutter where my finger is on the red section there will go through and cut off the laminate flush to the surface that this ball rolls on. So this is a straight flush bit. That's what I'm going to use to go around the four sides of the countertop to flush up all sides. When I glue my top down, I've got to use, because I will be going using the laminate trimmer to fix the top down as well, I would use the flush bit on three sides of the countertop, but across the front edge where the nosing is, if I use a flush bit, it will tend to burn the front of the laminate and remove some of the surface if I was just to use this. So the other bit that I use is got a slight angle back, and I work the appropriate depth by adjusting this plate so that it's actually just cutting a micro bevel across the top edge of it, not burning the face of the laminate. So we're gonna start by clamping our countertop firmly onto this table. I'm going to maneuver my router around the piece, flushing this up. I'll glue down the top, and then I'll show you what to do with this other router bit. Okay, my countertop's sitting nice and firm. With the router, I am going to start on the back side, on the bottom side when I'm doing my first trims, just to make sure I can see how the router's acting. Okay, so I'm going to start on the bottom side of my countertop, holding this plate level on the flat surface here, keeping it flat with these two fingers. I'm going to touch the router bit into the countertop, and you can see this ball bearing here will ride across this edge, and the cutter will cut the laminate flush to that edge. So I'm going to put on my safety gear, start this off, and I'm going to router just the bottom line. I will shut off the router so you guys can have a look at what it's done. So you can see here that this bottom piece is now trimmed perfectly flush with this, with the bottom piece of nosing. So my router bit is cutting quite well. I'm going to run it up this surface, pull around this corner, pull it back towards myself, go around this corner, and finish off where I started. Okay, so that is all routered flush. I'll probably just use sandpaper and a sanding block just to give it a nice removal of the fine edge that's on it, and then we'll proceed with gluing the top down. Okay, so I've got 100 grit sandpaper and a square block. Just gonna wrap it around the block to create a nice flat surface. I'm just gonna give this a nice light sanding. Basically just to make sure it is running perfectly flush. So that feels good to me. I wouldn't sand this way. It would maybe rip or delaminate the laminate off. So I'm gonna go this way. That's nice. Go on the bottom, just give it a couple. I might just break this edge lightly, just so that no one would cut their fingers on that. Okay, so this is all sanded, good to go. It's nice and stuck down flat. So I'm going to wipe this off and begin to glue the top and the top side of the laminate. Okay, so after sanding with my sanding block, I'm just gonna use a dry rag this time because I want to proceed with gluing right away, just to make sure all the dust is off of it. Also gonna take my piece and just double check that it is large enough. Got sufficient enough overhang on all four sides. So make sure you're all free of debris on the back side of your laminate. If anything gets in between these two surfaces at this stage, it is definitely going to show on your final piece. So okay, so that looks really nice and even. All my glue is all at the same plane, like nice and flat. Just roll it as long as it takes to get it all true and flat. So this is looking pretty good. Set it over here to dry. Begin gluing down on this piece. Okay, on this front edge, you can see the glue is on our finished laminate. You definitely got to wipe that off before it dries. It will affect the ball bearing on the router. Since it is going to be riding against this surface, I really want to make sure that there's nothing on the face. So just keep that in mind. Another thing, I don't know if you've noticed, but the particle board side always takes more adhesive because the wood is very porous. It sucks it in a lot more. So it actually does dry quite a bit faster than the other side as well. Okay, so that's looking really good for the first coat of gluing down the top. We're gonna let this dry till it's dry to the touch. Use one more coat. First coat, I believe, is dry. See, none of it is sticking to my hand. So I'm gonna begin by putting the second coat of contact cement on both surfaces. Takes a lot less on the second coat because it's already kind of sealed off. It's probably why my teacher had recommended going with 2 coats as a minimum, just because the first coat actually gets sucked into the material and some areas will probably get absorbed more than other areas, so it would leave an uneven layer of glue where once it's all sealed off and I come in and do a second layer, definitely when this layer dries, it's going to be even. Okay, that's looking nice and even. Okay, so on my first coat, I had some glue on the front face here, which I had to wipe off. On the second coat, I think I'm going to use some masking tape. Tape across the front first, because when I wipe it off, I technically am wiping the top surface off on this very fine edge where I actually do need adhesive there for sure. So this will just ensure that I'm not wiping off the adhesive on the top. So I'm just gonna run a bead of tape perfectly flush with the top edge of my laminate. Now I can roll this fine edge that's on top of it and not worry about the glue getting on the face. Okay, so that looks nice and even. I'll pull my tape. A little bit got through there, so I'm still gonna wipe it, but I'm gonna be very sure not to wipe it off the top. Okay, so this is all looking good for the second coat. I'm gonna let these dry, then I'll be applying the top to the top of the particle board countertop. The second coat of contact cement is now dry. It's not tacky at all, so that means I'm ready to go. Now this is still a fairly small countertop. I personally feel comfortable that I could flip this piece on and drop it on here knowing that all four sides would be overhanging and that I would be in the safe. But another method that I'm going to show you is a much safer route. It's using some material to lay across here and shim up. Then I can put the two layers, one on top of the other, and then remove the strips. I've got these carpet smooth edge strips available right downstairs here, so I'm going to use those. You could cut some thin strips on your table saw. You could use metal rod. Basically just anything that's not going to leave a particle down on this surface. So I'm going to set these on the countertop, a couple inches, 6 inches, 8 inches away from each other. Now you can see that they don't stick because the contact cement is dry. I'm going to take my top, lay that on top of these strips. Okay, so you can see that that is a much safer route than trying to get it on without. So what I'm going to do is adjust it so that I've got the overhang on all four sides, which seems really good there. Now I'm going to lift this edge up and remove the one strip and just touch this side down so that I know that it's going to stay in this position. Now I'm going to lift this up a tiny bit, remove this one. That's all looking good. Like I said, it's very important that you stick these together in the right position the first time, because you cannot pull it back apart and restart. If you set this down and you're in a situation where it's crooked, when you pull it apart, it's going to pull the glue off one side or the other. Because the glue is bonded right together, it will stay together more likely than the glue will stay on the particle board countertop or on the backside of the laminate. So again, whichever method you choose, you cannot do it twice. So all right, so that is put in its correct position. You can see that I've got a overhang all the way around. I can pick this up and show you guys on the other side how much overhang I have. Now I'm going to set this down. You can see I'm overhanging the edge so that it's perfectly flat. I've got my roller. This thing puts a tremendous amount of force per square inch when I'm pressing down on it, and I'm going to begin rolling my sheet back and forth, staying away from that edge because getting close to the edge but staying away from the edge because I don't want to break it. So okay, so that is firmly pressed down. I've rolled it out sufficient enough that these two layers should never delaminate from each other. Ready to take this piece out to the garage, give it my final router, and then set it into position in the laundry room countertop. Okay, so now that you've got your top applied to your countertop, just gonna use that same flush bit that I used on the nosing to clean up these three sides. Then, as I mentioned before, I've got to switch the bit to work that final edge so that I don't burn the front of my nosing piece. So I'm just gonna put on my safety gear, start in at this corner and go around to there, and then switch my router bit. Okay, so now that I've got my bit switched over, I've got to work on setting the height for how much the bit is going to stick out past this plate when I'm routering. When I was using the flush bit, it doesn't really matter the height of the bit because it's going to cut perfectly vertical. I don't know that you noticed, but when you see this bit, it's got a angle to it. So I'm not actually wanting to ride the bit on this front face. I just want to ride the bit to the depth that it's cutting this top sheet at just the same angle that this router bit is. So what I'm actually going to do is just set it at the lowest setting that I can that will just cut through the plastic laminate and check what it looks like and see if I've got to make adjustments from there. So start at your lowest height, run it across your front, just start at a corner, run it across a little bit, see how it looks, maybe trim the whole piece off, then lower it again and get it to close. I still don't router it right down. I get it close and then I use a sanding block, even a file to get it to the last closeness to the edge. So I've got my router bit set at the lowest height that I can. I'm going to start up here and just work this edge. Okay, so if you zoom in on this here, you can see that I am trimming it off, but it's just a tiny bit past the face still. So if I was cautious, I could call that good and use a file and sandpaper until I brought this just perfectly flush. I'm going to leave the router bit set at the depth that it's at right now, run the rest of this off, and then I'm going to lower my, make the bit come down further so that I can possibly get right to that bottom corner point and then sheared off back. So I'm gonna work this all the way off and then I'm gonna try to set it fine tune to cut this perfectly flush. Just kind of cleaning off some of the glue and stuff that shot out there, just so the ball bearing doesn't ride on that face. I'm just gonna lower that router bit like I said and give it one more pass. Okay, that's perfect. So I'm gonna run this one more time down the whole length, and that should just trim it off that last little bit, and then I'll just use a sanding block and a file to get it the rest of the way. Now that I've got this router down, it's not quite flush with the other piece. I don't want to risk going any lower with my router bit because then I might see it burn and remove the front facing material. So now I'm just going to use my file and sanding block to get it down to the rest of the way. On this top sheet, what you're actually trying to do is create a little micro bevel back this way so that you can sand it all nice and smooth without touching the front face. So I'm just gonna run a couple strokes back and forth and see where it gets us. So you don't want to rub it on the face, you're on an angle. Ooh, that's taking it down nice. I probably am just going to, if you were further away, you would use your file. Be careful on up motions because it could grab the laminate and pull it. You would just kind of, but mostly putting your pressure when you're going down. Glide back up, but pressure down. I'm going to stick with the sanding block for me because I'm so close as it is. I don't want to take off too much with this file. Okay, so this is looking nice and flush. I'm just gonna wipe it all down with the wet rag, take it into the laundry room and try to drop it into position. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Got it all flushed up. No sharp edges along there. And the joint is nice and stuck together. So I'm gonna bring this inside and drop it into position. Okay, got my finished countertop. Just gonna put it in exactly how I did when I was dry fitting. Make sure it all fit. Okay, so that's finished. I'm gonna later go underneath here and screw some screws up into the countertop. Not being very careful to select the right screws not to come through the top of the countertop. So take your time with your screw selection. Make sure you're happy with everything. With this type of countertop, a laminate one, I do not recommend gluing it down because you will never get it back off. For whatever reason, if you had to remove a countertop at some point down the road, if you glue it, it's going to get destroyed. If you screw it, you can adjust it, you can move it, you can remove it. So yeah, I hope that was helpful on how to laminate. Okay, so we're going to work on the drybar laminate countertop now. This countertop is a little different than the other one that I demoed to you guys earlier for the laundry room. The one in the laundry room just had, it was fitted between two sides and then one strip of nosing, where this piece has a wall on this side, a wall on this side, and that side, but it's got three intersections of nosing, an inside corner and an outside corner. So a little bit trickier than just, you know, attaching one nosing piece. I've got to put these ones on in an order to, in the right order to have the nosing look right. So I'm going to start by attaching these two, but when I figure out the length for this front strip on this corner, I've got to make an outside miter. So I'm going to use my sanding block and undersand to create a slight bevel on this finishing piece here. And then when I return this piece into it, I'll do the same so that I can end up with a tight outside corner where you can't see the blackness from the laminate. So we're going to work on that. So here's our tools for today. Got a sanding block stapled to a piece of plywood. Helps to clean up those edges afterwards, or if you see anything that you missed during your cleanup of the particle board top. Square pencil, just to mark these strips to the appropriate length. Again, to cut the plastic laminate, I'm going to use a carbide knife and just score it a few times and break it down. Roller tray and foam roller to apply the glue. And of course the small router for with the flush cut router bit to do the first passes, and the offset router bit to do where one laminate meets another. So got all my tools here set up, so let's get started. So I'm just getting a rough measurement here, about 1/4 inch larger, so that I can handle this piece and make the appropriate cuts to get in closer. Okay, so I'm a little bit past here, so I'm just going to use my sanding block to get it squared up to about the appropriate area, and then I'm going to do some undersanding to get it to be a miter on the outside corner. Just gonna take my scrap end and sand on a bevel on this end so that I can dry fit a few times and check and make sure my corner's looking good. Okay, I really like how that looks. So this piece I would be safe to glue on, and this piece I'm going to leave off until I've got this piece set so that I can work it into the other miter and make sure that I have a perfect corner. So I'm going to start with 1 and 2, and once I've got that, then I'm going to work this third one into that miter to make it perfect. Okay, I've got my contact cement ready to go. Got some strips of wood that I've cut just to glue these up without getting glue on top of my tabletop here. And I have wiped everything off with a wet rag to get all the dust, but I'm just going to give it a blow with my compressor. Really helps to have everything as dust free as possible when you're doing plastic laminate. If you get anything between the layers, you'll feel it through the laminate. Okay, that's nice for the first coat. Again, when we're doing this, we're going to put 2 coats on both surfaces before we adhere the 2 together. Okay, I've got a coat on all the surfaces. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll put a second coat. And then once that's dry, I'll stick it to the nosing piece and we'll get the router ready to go. Okay, so first coat is nice and dry. How you can tell that plastic or contact cement is dry is it's transparent again, where you can see right through it. And it's dry to the touch, like no sticky residue left on your fingers, no feeling like it's attached there. So I'm good and dry on my first coat. I'm going to go ahead and do my second coat now. One thing that I am going to do this time was when I was rolling my glue on the front face here, it was getting extra glue across the top edge. I was using a rag to wipe it down, thought I would try to speed things up, but I don't want to do it the second coat this time, so I'm probably just going to throw a strip of masking tape across that edge so that once I'm done gluing, I can pull the tape and this surface will remain free of glue. So, just going to tape that off and then we'll get going on our second glue. Okay, great. Both pieces seem to be dry now, so that's 2 coats on both surfaces. I'm going to now touch the 2 surfaces together, and the contact cement will bond them forever. So plastic laminate is a one-touch thing. So when I'm working on this strip first here, I'm going to push it into this inside corner as tight fitting as I can, and then roll it over, keeping it as parallel as I can, using my fingers as guides to bump into this top or bottom edge as I'm setting it down. That way I can line it up perfectly. Got my laminate roller. Just going to put some even pressure on it. Okay, so now I've got the rest of my nosing attached. I'm just working on this one last piece here. Very important, again, it's the outside corner. Just to recap, this nosing piece, I sanded a little 45-degree angle on the backside of the piece, and I've done the same here on this piece, just starting. And what I'm going to do is just keep dry fitting until I got the perfect miter on this corner. And then I will begin my glue process and stick this one down as well. Okay, I think I've got it. I'm going to start my glue up and get this one set. Okay, so my surface is nice and dry and tack free. I'm ready to throw on my second coat. I'll let that dry, and then we should be ready to bond the two layers together. So on the second coat, you can see it's using a lot less of the contact cement. That's because the wood is kind of sealed from the first layer, and so you'll use a lot less on the second coat. Okay, second coat seems to be dry, so now we're going to put the two layers together. I'm going to use some 1/2-inch water lines, just laying them across the wood to prevent the materials from being able to bond to each other before I get it into position. So something like that should work. So I'm just trying to line my sheet up approximately where it needs to go down. Then I'll start removing the pipes from one end and then work it all the way to the other end. Okay, looks all good. It's setting down, or it's resting together with each other. Now I'm just going to roll this out. Use my flush router bit across the wall sides, and then switch to my offset bit and finish off this front. So that looks really good for the first pass across the front. I'm just trying to clean off the glue that is kind of stuck on the edge there. Then I'm gonna lower my blade a little, or my router bit a little bit more, and give it one more pass. Then it should be good for the sanding block and ready to check for the install. Okay, that's it with the router. Now I'm just going to use my sanding block and clean that edge up so it's not too sharp. And then I'm going to use my file to work this inside corner. I'll bring you in for a close-up, but the router bit only does a round in there, so I've got to use my file to create the exact inside corner. And then I should be ready to take this downstairs and fit it into the drybar area. Okay, perfect fit. It's sitting really good. I'm going to use my roller, just give it some more rolls. Then I'll go up underneath the cabinet and fasten the countertop down to the cabinets.